Welcome back to the Couch GM podcast. Today I have on Mariners relief pitcher Gabe Speier to talk through his journey up to this point. Gabe was initially drafted by the Red Sox back in 2013, traded 4 separate times throughout his career, eventually made his way to Seattle. In 2023, his first season in Seattle, he threw a first pitch strike to 78% of the guys, which is the most by any pitcher since at least 2002 when they started tracking this stat. That year, he also had the highest chase rate in all of baseball at a 39.7% chase rate, and he was the only pitcher in baseball that season in the 90th percentile or higher in all of walk percentage, ground ball percentage, and chase percentage. He dealt with various injuries throughout the 2024 season, but coming into spring training this year, he is one of the guys that has been turning heads up to 95, 96 miles an hour in just his first bullpen. To stay up to date on all things Seattle Mariners, make sure to like and subscribe to the Couch GM for more content like this. And this podcast is sponsored by Black Label Supplements. They are a third-party tested, athlete-approved supplement company based here in the Pacific Northwest. Sounds like a lot of the Mariners relievers use pre-workout. Hey guys, check out Black Label Supplements. Use discount code CouchGM for 15% off your order. And if you are a Mariners fan or a Mariners athlete that is thinking of buying, selling, or refinancing a property anywhere on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, or Arizona, I'm actually a mortgage broker when I'm not making these sports videos. It's my goal to help as many sports fans and athletes get into the home of their dreams. I'll have a link in the description of this video if you'd like to reach out and connect. And with that, let's get into the podcast with Gabe Speier. Sweet, Gabe, thanks for joining the podcast. Looking forward to really digging into your story. Like I mentioned off air, you've had quite the story up to this point, and reports out of spring training so far that you're back up to your top gear. Let's start right there. You know, after day one of camp at spring training, Dan Wilson called you out as being one of the guys that, you know, you're popping the mitts. So what has your experience of spring training been so far?
It's been good. Yeah, you know, last year with the injury and everything and coming back and not really, you know, having my normal stuff, velo dropping and, you know, all that, it was kind of a tough year. And yeah, I put in a lot of good work this offseason to kind of get back to my, you know, normal self as far as throwing harder and, you know, regaining some confidence. And so, yeah, like I said, put in a lot of good work this offseason and really happy with where I'm at. It's cool that, you know, coaches and staff are taking notice. It's always a good feeling, but yeah, so, you know, first couple of days of spring, so far so good.
Yeah, I saw you post on your story that you were, you know, training at one of the local colleges, and that fastball was coming in there, so I had to post it on my account.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that.
What,
That was cool to see.
yeah, you got it. So what does a day at spring training look like for someone that hasn't been to spring training, or, you know, these are the first few days. So what does that workload look like?
Yeah, so I mean, most days, you know, days that you're not getting off the mound and, you know, pitching, it's just, you know, I get there, eat breakfast, and then, you know, we have a team meeting, kind of about, right now we're working on, you know, controlling the running game and bunt plays and stuff like that. And then, so we'll talk about that a little bit. And then, you know, I'll warm up, do some stretches and, you know, get the body going a little bit. And then we'll head out and play catch and work on those bunt plays and, you know, first and thirds and all the game type situations and stuff. And, yeah. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, I'll lift after that or get some recovery in and then eat lunch. And that's my day. That's a normal day. And then the mound days consist of, I mean, like when it's your mound day, you know, you're just preparing for that. So you're not going out and doing the, you know, fundamental stuff. You're just focusing on getting your body ready to throw off the mound. And so far, I've only just thrown bullpens. I have a live bullpen, so I'm going to face some hitters on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, so that's pretty much what it is so far. And then game days, you know, once the games come around, it's similar. If you're pitching in the game, you're kind of just, your day revolves around that. So just getting ready to, you know, go and compete out there.
Yeah, I guess kind of working off of that, when I've been up in Seattle, I see you walking with your bands around your neck. You know, you're out there stretching. With you being from Southern California, are those J bands that you're using? Did you have any experience with Alan Jaeger, J bands, long toss, that type of thing? Or is that something separate that you've kind of picked up on?
No, yeah, I don't have any, you know, personal connection with him, but J bands have been a part of my routine. You know, probably starting early days of high school, maybe freshman year. It's a good way to kind of warm up the shoulder. You know, Yeah, they've been part of the routine. And then also weighted balls are kind of part of my routine. Kind of throwing around some weighted balls, getting the arm going. But J-bands, like I said, have been part of the routine for a while.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, let's kind of dig into your story. You know, a lot of the fans might not know about exactly where you came from, and I didn't realize that you had been traded 4 separate times throughout your career. So let's start back with, you playing in high school. It looks like you were a two-way guy. You pitched and you raked at the plate. You committed to UC Santa Barbara, and then you ended up getting drafted by the Red Sox in the 19th round of the 2013 draft. So walk me through your growing up days. What teams, players did you watch growing up? And then, walk me through that draft.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to play in the major leagues since I can remember. That's always been my dream. I was fortunate enough to have some family members that played. My great uncle, so my father's uncle, Chris Speier, played shortstop for the Giants and a few other teams in the 70s and 80s. And then his son, my dad's cousin, was a relief pitcher in the late 90s all the way to 2009. So I knew early on, I looked up to those guys, and I wanted to be like them. I wanted to play at the highest level. So it's always been a dream of mine, and, super fortunate to be here and all that. But, yeah. And then, so I went into high school, Dos Pueblos High School. I was fortunate enough to make varsity as a freshman as a PO, pitcher only. So I just pitched my freshman and sophomore year. And then was a two-way guy my junior and senior year. Actually, my junior year, I didn't pitch at all. I was dealing with some elbow stuff. I had like PRP injections, and so it just hit. And I was pretty good at the plate, solid high school hitter. I was pretty small, so I wasn't like a power guy, but I could hit a little bit. And then senior year was kind of my year where things really started to kind of take off for me. I came back fully healthy from the PRP injection and was throwing, 90, 93, which, I was in high school, 12 years ago now. So back then that was really hard. I know kids are throwing way harder nowadays, but
That's
yeah.
insane.
And then I was a pretty good hitter my senior year, a lot of fun in high school, and then was committed to UC Santa Barbara. And like I said, it was always my dream to play at the highest level. So when I got drafted, I jumped at the opportunity. And especially, Red Sox, such a cool, historic franchise. It was a no-brainer for me. But so yeah, I got drafted. I, pulled the trigger on that. And towards the end of my senior year of high school, my elbow started kind of flaring up again. Velo dropped off my last few starts in my senior year. Was still able to get drafted, but I had Tommy John right away. I think I threw 3 innings in rookie ball for the Red Sox in 2013, my draft year, and then had Tommy John. And yeah, that following year, I was rehabbing, and then came back and threw the ball well. Velo jumped up big time. I was in the mid 90s at that point. And then the Red Sox traded me to Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess backing up a quick second, walk us through what it's like to get Tommy John. I mean, we see guys,
Yeah.
it's happening all the time. What's that mentality like? Was it kind of like, hey, I'm going to try to pitch through this, or it's like, no, you need to get Tommy John right now, and then that recovery process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I, the fact that I took my whole junior year off of throwing, and it came back, because so I did the rehab thing. I tried to avoid surgery, and it kind of came back. So at that point, we knew it was time to get surgery. I got multiple opinions from doctors, and they all kind of recommended it. And so that was the route for me. And, ever since, that was 12 years ago now. Wild to think about, but no issues since then, knock on wood. But the elbow has been strong ever since. So it was a tough time, rehabbing. You never want to be hurt, seeing your buddies kind of go out and plan, and you're kind of stuck on the training table. It's never fun, but I was able to kind of put in a lot of good work and get really strong, and it ended up being an okay thing.
We see guys currently right now like Matt Brash, Jackson Kowar coming back from that same thing. How long did it take for you to get back to where you were 100% confident in throwing it as hard as you can?
Yeah. So another thing that I was fortunate was I got it so young. So I healed very fast. I was back in 10 and a half months. Um, Another thing about my surgery specifically was that they left the UCL ligament in there. So it wasn't a full tear, it was just a partial. They were able to leave the original ligament in, and then the tendon they take out of your forearm, or it's a ligament, I'm not sure, sorry, the palmaris, I believe it's called, and they kind of just overlapped it over the tear. So I essentially have like 3 UCLs. But yeah, so that was my specific thing that I had, and like I said, no issues. But yeah, it seems like you said it's very common nowadays, and I don't know what the percentages are, but I know it's a lot. A lot of guys get it.
Yeah. So you're 19, 20 years old, and you ended up December 11th, 2014. You get traded to the Tigers, and it wasn't a small trade. You were traded along with
No.
Yoenis Cespedes and Alex Wilson for Rick Porcello. So walk us through,
Mhm.
how exactly that went down. Did you hear from your agent first?
No, I didn't. So it was in the off season. It was so I was just I think a call actually woke me up from the Red Sox saying, "Hey, we traded you. Wish you all the best," kind of thing. And I was shocked for sure. And I didn't, I was so young, and I didn't know. I didn't even ask what the trade was. I was just like, I was living with my parents. I woke up and told my parents, "Hey, I just got traded." And then a few minutes later, the Tigers called me, and they were just saying, like, "We're super happy to have you. Like, you were a big part of this trade, even though I was just this rookie ball kid." But they made me feel special. I was super excited. And then I found the news out about like what the trade was and the magnitude of the trade. And that was, as a 19, 20-year-old kid, it was really cool to be involved in that high profile of a trade. So for me, I was stoked.
Yeah, and then you're with the Tigers. You're in high A ball. You had a stellar year, 33 appearances, 20 years old. That following offseason, you get traded again, along with Ian Kroll for Cameron Maben. Was that one expected?
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't say any of them were expected.
Yeah.
But again, being a minor league guy in a major league trade was really cool. And same thing, the Braves called me, and they said they were super excited, and I was really excited. I was excited to be a Brave. Yeah, crazy time. I mean, I think I got traded 3 times in one calendar year, so it was wild. So, like I said, super excited to be a Brave, but then I think it was
2
21,
weeks later.
22 days later, got traded again, and in another high profile trade that
Yeah.
uh, people will remember as being a little lopsided. But yeah.
And just so everyone knows, he was traded to the Diamondbacks along with Shelby Miller for Dansby Swanson, Ender Inciarte, and Aaron Blair. And that was, 21 years old heading into the 2016 season. So
Mm.
2016 season, you're with the Diamondbacks now in their system. You go up a couple different levels. You start in low A, you end up getting to double A baseball. What was that year for you?
That was an awesome year. That was probably that was one of my better minor league seasons. I went from low A, repeated low A. So was really comfortable there and was able to, put up some good numbers, was super confident, and went to high A. Was really excited to get called up, getting called up as a young player. It's a really good feeling. And I actually didn't pitch all that great in high A. I got hit around a little bit, but the stuff was there. I was throwing hard and confident, and I got hurt at my shoulder for I think I was on the shelf for about a month. And when I came back, I didn't go back to high A. They sent me straight to double A. So it was like, whoa. And that was a big shock. Shoulder, that year it didn't feel great the rest of the year. But because I got hurt, I had an opportunity to go play in the fall league. That was a lot of fun. That was a great experience. Lots of, I think my year, like Cody Bellinger was in it, and Yohan Moncada, and Tim Tebow. Actually, I got to face Tim
Oh,
Tebow in
wow.
the fall league. That was pretty fun. Um, it was cool having him there because the fall league, there's not a whole lot of fans, but when we'd play Tim Tebow's team, there was a lot of fans, so that was cool. But yeah, all in all, that was a good year for me. Yeah.
And then going through those next couple of years, you're a double A, 2017, 2018. Eventually you get traded again, this time to the Royals. That was June 6th, 2018. You got traded with Elvis Luciano for John Jay. And then what was your experience, with the Royals during your time there?
Yeah, so that trade actually was a little different because it was during the season. So, it was right before the All-Star break. That was a little different, having to kind of pack up and move, actually, whereas the other ones were in the off season and I had time to kind of adjust. That one was, packing up the apartment and leaving, and it was crazy. But again, super, super cool. I remember being excited to become, play for the Royals. And yeah, so that was different, and going into a clubhouse, not knowing anybody and kind of having to, start over in that sense. But yeah, I loved my experience with the Royals. I ended up debuting with them, and, they gave me that first chance to kind of live out my dream. And I'm super appreciative for that.
I guess quick question: as you're progressing throughout the system and the minor leagues, did you notice, like, is there a big difference between low A to high A to double A to triple A in the quality of hitters that you're seeing and how you have to approach them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every level you go up, the talent gets better for sure. I remember the biggest jump for me, obviously, besides getting called up to the big leagues, was double A to triple A. Those, because lots of triple A guys have major league time and have major league approaches, and that was probably the toughest jump, besides getting called up, was from double A to triple A.
So then September 2019, the Royals end up calling you up 2 days later. After you got your contract selected, you were debuting against the Tigers at 24 years old. Walk us through what it was like when you first got that call saying, or did the AAA manager call you in, announce it? What was that experience?
Yeah, so for me, it was, I got called into our AAA season had ended, and guys were getting called up for September. And I think so a couple guys got called up, maybe two guys, and then everything was kind of quiet in the clubhouse. I was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to be one of them. And 10 minutes later, the manager called me in and told me. And I didn't, even getting called into the manager's office, I was like, I'm not, I wasn't expecting it until he told me. But that was a great experience. And obviously, calling family afterwards and getting to break the news to them was really exciting. And yeah, and then I get to Kansas City, and we're playing Detroit. I think it was a 3-game series, and I didn't, it might've been a 4-game series. I remember not pitching the first few days, and that was tough, sitting in the bullpen, like, when is it going to happen? And
just the nerves building.
But, yes. And so I threw the last game of the Detroit series, and it was a day game in September. It was a very hot day. I remember it being 95 degrees and very humid, and not the most comfortable day to make the debut, but I was able to get in there, and I actually had a good debut. I was struck out the first 2 guys I faced, and I think I walked the next guy, and then the next guy flew out. So that was a very special day for sure.
Who was your first strikeout?
Kristen Stewart, who was an outfielder for Detroit at the time. We were actually teammates in low A together when I was with Detroit, so I knew him, and it was kind of fun.
Do you still have that ball? Do you keep some of the memorabilia that you've collected throughout the years?
Yeah, so I do have that ball, and the Royals did something really cool where they kind of framed the scorecard from that game. So I have that framed up. Awesome. And then they also framed the jersey I was wearing and stuff like that. So I have a couple debut little tokens.
Following year was 2020. You pitched in 8 games for the Royals. That was the weird COVID year. Walk me through what it was like to be playing baseball during that time.
Yeah, it was wild. I I fortunately did not get COVID in 2020, which was good. But yeah, playing with no fans, you know, I was still a really young player, still a rookie, so it was just cool for me to be there. But definitely weird. You know, no fans, no noise. You know, lots of masks and regulations and stuff like that. So definitely a weird time for baseball and you know not just baseball but everything. But it was weird. I mean, having family not be able to come, and they want to come see, and that was probably the most difficult part. But got through it. I mean, that year was tough because that break during spring training when everything shut down, everyone went home, and I went home and was actually really working hard, and I told myself I'm going to lose some weight and come in really good shape for this shortened season. And I came in just too skinny, I think, and my stuff wasn't there. It just didn't translate. And so 2020 was kind of a rough year for me. I actually got sent down to the alt site after not pitching great at all. Probably my worst little stint there. And then getting sent down to the alt site and not to AAA, and again pitching with no fans and only to your teammates, not other teams. It was a tough time, and I actually got DFA'd after that season. So that was a tough year. But then was able to come back in 21. Put some good weight back on. Stuff came back and had a really good year in AAA that year, and got called up in September again, and then was able to continue that success that September in 21.
Yeah, so it's a wild story. It looks like. I mean, you had a solid year, as you mentioned, in 21 at AAA. 2.98 ERA, 1.191 WHIP, 11.3 strikeouts per nine. You get called up September 15, 2021. And you got to walk me through this story. You drove 3 hours while the Royals were actually playing their game, and then you ended up pitching the 7th inning that day.
Yeah. That is my hands down craziest baseball experience. I, like you said, it was having a good year. Was a little frustrated they weren't calling me up, but they finally did, and I was really excited. And so I get the call, and their game was going to start in like 30 minutes. And so my wife, bless her heart, she was able to kind of pack a little to-go bag, and she brought our dog, and so she picked me up from the field, and we started heading to Kansas City for the game. And we were listening to it on the radio, kind of getting the play-by-plays. And I remember I wasn't able to eat before we left, so I was starving, and I was like, we need to stop to eat so I can fuel up. And and I get a call from the GM, and he's like, hey man, we need you, like we might need you in this game, like you need to hurry up. And I'm like, oh gosh. So I end up,
we'll pay the speeding ticket for you.
Yeah, exactly. But wasn't able to eat, and I we get there, and I remember a clubby was out in the parking lot waiting for us. He takes my stuff, I head out. Megan and my dog Dax get into the stadium, and I remember getting dressed in the locker room, and one of my teammates comes up and he's like, hey, Skip needs you, he needs you to be ready. And I'm like, yeah, good one. Pick on the new guy kind of thing. But sure enough, I get to the dugout, and Mike Matheny, who's the manager at the time, tells me to run out to the bullpen. He's like, hey, we're going to need you right now. Like, go get ready. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I run out during a mound visit in the middle of a game. I'm running across the field to the bullpen. I get into the bullpen, and my teammates are like, hey Gabe, what's up? And I'm like, I can't talk right now. And I just pick up the ball and start throwing,
slamming the bands.
And yeah, just no time for anxiety, no time for nervousness, just right to it. And I'm able to get ready. I run into the game, and the first guy I'm facing is Matt Olson.
Oh man,
is great hitter. And was able to strike him out. It was just a wild experience. I got out of the situation, and super crazy time. But I think the one stat that is funny is I think the time frame from me showing up to being in the game was 20 minutes. So I pulled my truck up, and then 20 minutes later, I was standing on the mound facing Matt Olson. So, like I said, the craziest baseball experience I've had by far, but I wouldn't change it. It was great.
That's a baseball story if I've heard one.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely my craziest one.
So then you head into that next season. It looks like you spent a majority of the year at AAA. Spent some time also with the Royals. I don't know if that was a typo on your ERA there in AAA. Did you have
Not a typo.
a
14 something.
14.51 ERA?
Yeah. So I'll run you through that year. So I break with the team. I make the major league club out of spring. And I pitch really well. I think it was maybe 18 or 19 innings with like a low 2 ERA, something like that. And I was feeling good. Really, happy with how I was throwing the ball. And then I got COVID. And I spent like a month on the COVID IL, maybe 3 weeks or something like that. And I came back and velo is ticked down a little bit. But I had options and they sent me down. And for me, it was just really frustrating to get sent down. It was just really tough because I had been DFA'd before. I worked my way back. I was there and I was pitching well, and then I get sent down. It felt like they kind of like swept the rug from under me. And, I just kind of went to AAA really salty, kind of in a bad mood, and didn't want to be there, and just wasn't in it. Unfortunately, looking back on it, it's a big regret of mine. And I just couldn't get anybody out. And then it got to a point where it was embarrassing, and I was like, all right, let's turn it on. Like, it's time to go. And at that point, it was like, it had already started snowballing. It was just difficult to get out of. And, I pitched to a 14 ERA. It was a horrible experience, but not fun. But it led to, me getting DFA'd again, and the Mariners claimed me. So, I learned from that year a lot, never to give in like I did. And, like I said, it was tough. But I got claimed by the Mariners and was able to kind of put that 2023 year together. And so a little bit of a light came from it. I learned from it and got an opportunity with the Mariners, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't mean that as a dig against you or anything like that.
No,
stat sheet, and as you mentioned, it's like you were performing in the big leagues, but then at AAA, so.
Yeah, and I think, COVID affected me a little bit, but I think the ultimate thing was that I was just so frustrated, and I just, I didn't handle it well at all.
So during that next offseason, after you are DFA'd, who was the one that reached out from the Mariners to let you know that you had been claimed by them?
It was Jack Mosselman, who's in the front office. He's also our travel secretary, but he contacted me, and and it was awesome. Just as excited to get claimed by the Mariners as I was for any of those trades that we talked about earlier. For me, after that year pitching so badly in AAA, I had legit thoughts, that might be it. I might not pitch in the big leagues again. I might not come back from that year, kind of deal. So to get claimed by a team that had been in the playoffs the year before and was super exciting. And I had that first initial meeting with our pitching coach, Pete Woodworth. We call him Woody. But yeah, and I was expecting that first initial kind of meeting to be like, hey, we need you to change this and change that, and all these different things. But it was the opposite. It was, we claimed you off waivers because we like what you have, and we just need you to be in the zone more and maybe attack hitters in a slightly different way. And I kind of accepted that pitch philosophy that the Mariners have as my identity, really attacking hitters, staying on the attack at all times, really pounding the zone. like I said, it kind of became my identity, and I took it and ran with it. And, still to this day, it's at the forefront of my mind when I'm out there is be on the attack.
Yeah, they preach dominate the zone, and in 2023
Mm-hmm.
you had a purely dominant season, 54 and 2/3 innings, a 3.79 ERA, 1.061 WHIP, 10.5 strikeouts per nine, and a 1.8 walks per nine. You threw a first pitch strike to 78% of the guys, which is the most by any pitcher since at least 2002 when they started tracking that stat. And that was up from your previous year's 45%, pretty much
Mm-hmm.
doubling the first pitch strikes that you were throwing. And from what I saw in the notes, the Mariners told you to throw more strikes, obviously, but to throw more sinkers to lefties and sliders to righties. Is that
Mm-hmm.
accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, so before, when I was with the Royals, I was almost strictly four seam sliders to lefties, and I had always been able to handle lefties pretty well. But Woody mentioned, like, he's like, why don't you throw your sinkers to lefties? And I didn't have an answer for him. I was just like, I don't know. I've never really been told to. And he's like, there was a sample size of me throwing some sinkers to lefties. It wasn't like I never threw it. But he's like, the numbers show your sinker to lefties, like, you've thrown this many, and I think you've given up one hit, and like however many swing and misses and all this stuff. He's like, it's a really good pitch. And I'm like, why hasn't anyone ever told me this? I feel like this is information I should know. And, obviously he told me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I took it and ran with it and was just hammering lefties with sinkers, and it made the slider even better because it moves the opposite direction. And now, throwing sinkers to lefties is something that I, pride myself on.
I like to ask all the pitchers this question. You being in so many different organizations, then coming to the Mariners, what is the real big difference between what style the Mariners have with their pitching? Is it as simple as throw more strikes, or is it some
Mm.
of the more detailed stuff?
Yeah, so I can only speak for myself. What they've told me, but yeah, I mean, for me, it really was that simple. I mean, they have a pitching philosophy, and it's pound the zone. Dominate the zone, and win the O's and the 1-1s. And I think every organization preaches it. Or not preaches it, but that's part of it, kind of deal. But
Mm-hmm.
it is the main thing here with the Mariners. And for me, I was able to just kind of take it and go and do it. Just really, my intent is just throw the ball as hard as I can down the middle, and it never does. It never really goes down the middle. I might shade, arm side, glove side. It's not just.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the intent, is to just really say, here it is, hit it, and believe in your stuff. And I guess for me, the biggest difference with the Mariners was that they showed me the numbers. They showed me what happens when you fall behind and what happens when you get ahead. And it was clear as day what happened. Like, it's just, the numbers are so clear cut. Like, when you get ahead, you are just so much better. Anybody is. So I think that was the biggest thing, was, I'd heard win the O's, win the 1-1s, attack the zone, all these different things. But when I saw, the actual data, it was like, this is a no-brainer. It's like, you do this all season long, you play the odds, and it's going to end up, working out in your favor.
That led to you having the highest chase rate in all of baseball that year at a 39.7% chase rate. I feel like since you were in the zone so much, that hitters were banking on you being in the zone, but then by the time they're swinging, it's out of the zone, they're chasing at it. So if you start with dominating the zone early on, you can then expand it later in the count, and they have to defend.
Yes, exactly. They definitely go hand in hand. If you establish yourself as a strike thrower, hitters are going to be more aggressive. And that was definitely the case. I mean, and you see the scouting reports on different hitters. Who's passive and who's aggressive. And, with the aggressive guys being known as the first pitch strike thrower, you can expand even on first pitch on an aggressive guy. And, they're not going to chase every time, but, there's being a strike thrower, it definitely helps with the chase.
And one other stat from that year, you were the only pitcher in baseball to be in the 90th percentile or higher compared to the rest of the league in walk rate, ground ball rate, and chase rate. So you had it all
Mm.
working that year.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I know I can get back to that, and I'm excited to
hmm
go out and try and do it again.
Absolutely. So then 2024 happens. You deal with some shoulder stuff going on there. Do you want to walk through kind of what was going on with that?
Yeah, so 24 was a tough year again, but that first month I was pitching really well. Started off really hot, and then we went on the East Coast trip, and I had a rough road trip. I think I gave up two. We played the Yankees. I gave up 2 runs. We played someone else. I gave up 2 runs, and then we played the Nationals. I gave up it's like 3 outings in a row, giving up 2 runs. Rough road trip, and then we come back and we play the Astros, and I had a good outing. I struck out Tucker and Alvarez. Felt good that night, and then woke up the next morning with my shoulder was kind of bugging me. I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't think I was injured, to be honest. But I tried to play catch that day, and something didn't feel quite right. So I asked the training staff if I could have a day. I was like, I need a day. My arm's not feeling great. We did some treatment on it and whatnot, and came back the next day and was playing catch. Still same thing, just didn't feel quite right. So we went and had some images taken, and it showed a grade 2 strain in my subscap, which is a muscle that's like kind of underneath in the armpit area. And grade 2 is a tear. So the muscle was torn halfway through, about, is what the imaging showed. Was not expecting that. Was pretty bummed, obviously. Had some injections, some PRP put in my shoulder. And then started the rehab process, trying to get back. Was back and forth between Seattle and Arizona. My family, I have my wife, our dog, and I have a 1-year-old son as well. His name's Casey. And so when the team was home, I was home with the team. And when they went on the road, I was in Arizona. So it was just a tough time kind of going back and forth between that and, trying to get back. Watching the games on TV was tough, not being with my teammates and, not being able to help the team win games. And it's just tough. Being hurt is never fun. But anyways, I was really eager to get back, and was throwing, and in my rehab games I was like 90, 91, so the velo was not there, unfortunately. And but like I said, I wanted to get back. I knew I could go try to help the team, and this stuff just never really returned after my injury last year. I was kind of stuck in that low 90s spot, instead of being, normally I'm in the mid 90s or so. And so it was tough. I knew I was out there competing with my, C+ stuff, not my A+ stuff. And because of that, I was maybe trying to nibble. I knew my stuff wasn't as good, so I was trying to be a little too cute with my pitches. And it just resulted in me walking guys and not pitching well. So frustrating time, and getting sent down to AAA, not fun. But like I learned from my experience, with the Royals, and was able to go down there and compete and pitched well in AAA, which was, like I said, never fun to get sent down to AAA. But I was proud of myself to, not turn off and keep it going and go out there and compete and pitch well. And, got a few more chances that year getting called up. But like I said, the stuff just wasn't really there. Unfortunately, super frustrating to look back on, but learned from it, knew what I needed to do this off season. I needed to move fast again. I felt just sluggish. My arm just didn't feel like it was moving fast. And the only thing I can think of is the injury. I mean, I rehabbed good. The training staff took care of me. We did everything right. It just wasn't there. And So, like I said, this offseason, there was a lot of focus on moving fast again and getting that arm going. And I didn't put the ball down. So normally I would take like a month off from throwing, but this offseason I didn't put the ball down. I right away was playing catch 3 days a week or so, and they put a good throwing program together for me, and getting the shoulder healthy again, and throwing some weighted balls. And coming into spring, it's really nice to see. I throwing 95 in a bullpen. I don't think I've ever really done that, to be honest. Normally I know if I'm like 92, 93 in a bullpen, that will translate to mid 90s in a game scenario. But the fact that I'm throwing 95 in my bullpens right now, it's really exciting. I feel really good. My stuff is back. I'm ready to go, and yeah, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And from an article that I saw about your current performance at spring training, it's that you aren't really trying to throw as hard as you can. It's like you're trying to move efficiently, you're trying to move clean. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah. So back to the 2024 season, the velo wasn't there. So it was something I was trying to chase. When I was out there, I wasn't super focused on attacking the zone. I was focused on throwing hard. It's not that I wasn't focused on attacking the zone. I was, but I was more focused on trying to get my velo back. And pitching like that, it just never works out well. You're out there trying to chase numbers instead of get hitters out, and it's just not a good spot to be in. So yeah, this off season, I did everything I could so I don't have to worry about that when I'm out there. I just go out and compete and have the arm be where it needs to be.
And in 2023, when you had that success, you were throwing your sinker 46% of the time, the slider 32, four seam 21. You had a changeup that you threw 2% of the time. Are you working with that same 4-pitch mix? Or I also saw that you might have added a sweeper in 24.
Yeah, I was messing around with that, just working on things to try to get hitters out. But yeah, this year it's back to the normal repertoire. Sinker, four seam slider, and the changeup is something that I really worked on this offseason. I don't think it's going to be a 2% pitch this year. I think it's going to be used a lot more.
Okay.
I've gained some confidence in that pitch and really worked on it, and I think it'll be good for me this year. I've always been able to attack lefties pretty good and have success against left-handed hitters, but righties, not as much. Being a left-handed pitcher, it's kind of generally how it goes. But I really don't want to be labeled as that lefty specialist kind of guy. I want to be a high leverage reliever. So in order for me to be a little more successful against righties, I've really developed that changeup.
That's awesome. So I guess with this spring training compared to the last one, obviously there's been a coaching change. Dan Wilson is now the manager. What are some differences that you have seen throughout camp, or how are the vibes?
The vibes are good. Scott was great. I love Scott. He gave me the opportunity. He was in my corner, and I love Scott. And Dan is great as well. He's the same way. Me and Dan get along really well, and I think I can speak for everyone when I say that. I mean, he seems to everyone's got respect for him. He played for a long time with the Mariners, pretty legendary Mariner as well. So everybody loves him. The vibes are good. The vibes are high, and we're ready to go. And Dan is he's the captain of the ship, and we're all behind him.
Now, there's yourself that's to be excited for as far as arms are concerned. There's some guys that have already been in the organization for the bullpen, as well as guys that they brought in throughout the offseason that I'm actually making a video talking about some of these newer arms that might be an option out of the bullpen. What other guys have you seen or talked to that have stood out to you so far?
It's going to be a fun year for Gregory Santos. I think, he, like myself, was dealing with stuff last year, health stuff. And, man, if that guy's healthy this year, he's electric. I mean, he is a big human who throws very hard. And, he's got some anger behind it too. You remember that game in San Diego last year? Like, he's not scared.
Jerks and Profar?
So, Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, he's gonna be fun to watch. And then obviously he's Matt Brash. Everyone knows the name. Everyone knows the famous slider he's got, and all his other pitches are great too. But it's gonna be an exciting year. Lots of my best friends I've made in the game are on this team, so it's a tight knit group. And it's the bullpen especially. I can only really speak for the bullpen, but it's a tight knit group, and it's going to be a fun year, I think.
So you're walking around spring training. Is there kind of like the pack of the starting pitchers? There's like a pack of the bullpen guys that are sticking together. Do you guys play off of pitch grips with each other, kind of like the starting pitchers have?
Yeah, I mean, when you have yeah, I mean, it's a little sectioned out, and it's all good, but it's funny that way. But when you have a starting group like we do, Logan, Kirby, Louie, Bryce, Wu, you can't help but not pick their brain. They're all elite level starters, and so it's fun to talk pitching with those guys, and our bullpen's elite too, I think. And so yeah, we definitely bounce pitch grips and all that kind of stuff off of each other, and yeah, we all want to make each other better, so it's fun in that way.
I guess one more question I got. So throughout the regular season, ideally a reliever wants to be available to pitch every day, but can you walk me through kind of what it looks like as far as communication with the pitchers, the staff of like, hey, this is your max amount of days that you can pitch per week, or the max pitches you can throw in a week? What does that workload management look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's mostly based on how you feel that day. So, if there are times where you're going to throw 3 days in a row, and they're really good at listening to you. So, like, if I were to throw 2 days in a row, and they ask, "Hey, can you throw again today?" And if I was like, you know what, like, I'm not feeling great, they would be like, "Okay, that's fine." And there's a good communication there, and they listen. But like you said, being available is a big thing. So, but yeah, generally, if you throw 2 days in a row, you generally have the third day off, that next day off. They might ask you if you can come in and get a hitter or something like that. And sometimes you have to, and it's all good. But I would say normally, it's also on pitch count. It's a good question. It's a tough question I'd have to kind of dig deep on, because there's pitch counts involved, and there's stressful. I think if you're throwing the 6th inning and you're up by 10, if you're up by 10, whereas if you throw the 6th inning and you come in bases loaded, 2 outs, like the high stress level of it dictates how you're going to feel the next day. So there's a lot that goes into it, but generally, if you throw 2 days in a row, you're down the next day. And if you throw 3 out of 4 days, you'd be down the next day, stuff like that. But generally, I think the best answer is it's all based on how you're feeling. Even if you throw 2 days in a row and you come in on the 3rd day and you're like, hey, I feel great, you're available. So it's kind of based on just how you feel that day.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I'm always curious, just behind the scenes, like communication. So Brandon Garcia, he's a guy that's coming up through the minor leagues right now. He could be an option out of the bullpen as well. He enjoys taking a lot of pre-workout before a game to like amp him up and get him in the zone and dialed in. Like, how much caffeine are you guys drinking out there throughout the game? I mean, 7-10 start, you might not be pitching until close to 9-10 o'clock. What's your go-to to get ready and to get amped up to get in the zone for your appearance?
Yeah, so pre-workout is definitely part of my routine. I generally, in the 3rd or 4th inning is when I drink my pre-workout, and then it kicks in the 5th or 6th, and then I'm ready to go. If I don't have it, it's not like I can't pitch, but it's definitely helpful, and it just gets you going. Have you had pre-workout before?
Oh, I lift every day. So yeah, I mean, I pre-workout pretty much every day.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so you get it. I mean, the beta alanine that's in pre-workout gets you itchy kind of, and it just amps you up. It's a good little fire starter. And I'd say pre-workouts part of a lot of guys' routines in the bullpen. I know that Thornton has pre-workout. Sauce has an energy drink. Uh, Munoz drinks Red Bull. So there's just, everyone's having something. And but yeah, it's a good way to get things going for sure.
Yeah, I got to go pre-workout, and then it's a certain playlist that I got to listen to. If you can just get that extra 5% amped up, it makes a difference.
Yeah, music's another one. I mean, that's why we have walkout songs, and it definitely, certain music for, everyone's different, but there's music that gets everybody going.
Well, Gabe, really appreciate your time. Really excited to see you the rest of the spring and see you up there in Seattle. Best of luck. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll see you out there.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.